Welcome to the final conference session of the Global Economic Zones Expo and Convention 2019. In this session, we will listen to presentations from industry experts. I'm honored to call on stage our moderator, Mr. Rakesh K. Sahai, Managing Director, Nuovafil and Infoteck Private Limited. Please welcome our presenters, Ms. Vineeta Hariharan, Lead and Public Policy Expert, World Bank. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Shashank D. Shende, Joint Development Commissioner, Kandla CEZ, India, rejoining us on stage. Well, we'll move further. Mr. R. Preston Martin, Co-founder and CEO, Adrianople Group. Mr. O.P. Mishra, Special Secretary Home, Government of NCT of India, of Delhi. Mr. Harit Mohan, CEO and Founder, Signicent Information Solutions LLP, India. I believe we can move forward, and our last delegate will join us as he is. I request Mr. Sahai to please begin the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sinha. You have been very nice giving the presentation to all the speakers and the chairperson. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my pleasure that I have been decided to be chair for this session. And the last session, we have a lot of panels, which is represented by the government as well as the private, and we have Mr. Martin as well from abroad who will share, the various zones. He has got a lot of experience visiting various zones, so you'll have a good knowledge about it. So to start with immediate, I have the first and the foremost is Mr. Harit Mohan, the CEO and the founder of the information system. Harit is actually, you have been listening all the policies and various matters, but here now he is going to talk about this IPR, and he has a lot of experience, and he has presented papers at various places, regarding this IPR. And we are lucky to have him here. And introduction, I'm just skipping at this moment because his presentation will let you know exactly who he is. And it's a very interesting presentation which he has made for all of you. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Harit.
I think I should thank Mr. Rakesh. I promised him just before the session that I'll not make it boring. This is the first session right after the tea break. So, I hope I can make it more crisp and clear. So, I have made this session more of interactive. So, if my chair allows, I can, would like to involve the audience, than making it a little more monotonous in some ways. So what is IPR? Basically, IPR stands for intellectual property rights. Now, I have been hearing some sessions here today. Many of you have been coming from industry backgrounds, services sectors, government sectors. We have talked about clusters, SEZs. What's the end product of any of these things that we generally consider? The end product remains that we need to basically take care of what we are manufacturing, what we are making, what is the end product looking like. So what happens mostly is that we forget in the, in the race to make things that we need to protect it in certain ways so that no other can copy it. So IPR basically at the heart is very important because we need to protect what we are making. And then there are different kind of possibilities by which you can protect the things that you're manufacturing. So For example, I have this umbrella over here that will actually tell you what are the IPR things and what we can do is. So first of all, of course, there are patents. Patents are basically given for the utilities, models, or manufacturing products that you make, anything that you think, if problem has been solved, you can, for example, patent it. For example, if I may ask the audience, you may be, having your mobile batteries going dead. And what we do is we look for charging points in and around. And we want to charge our mobile phones. Now, if there is no table around, what we do is we try and hang the mobile phone on the top of the charger. What if it vibrates? It falls down. So simple solution could be, a jugaad could be, for example, you can just put a hinge on it where the phone can lie on. So it solved a very normal problem, and thus these things can be patented. Likewise, we have other protections like trademarks, which is for brand protection. So we have a lot of logos on the screen over here. You would see there are a lot of logos. So I'm sure most of the brand owners would have protected it in some or the other formats. So these all fall under trademarks. And once they have been given a grant by the Indian Patent Office, they got as registered trademarks. Likewise, we have copyrights for the content that we create for media, for the blogs that we write, for the poetry that we do, for anything that we do that falls under the umbrella of copyrights. Then we have trade secrets. Secrets could be something which I do not want to disclose to the public. I want to keep that in mind for my internal purposes. Likewise, we have geographical indication. We have, for example, people from Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, and a lot of other states speaking here. So everybody has, for example, if you talk about Alfonso mangoes, which city does it come to your mind? Anybody would like to take a guess? Which city is, for example, popular in silk area? Okay, what if talk about chappals? Kolhapuri. So all these fall under geographical indications. Okay, all of them are basically geographical indications where you give the rights to the cities or the states, and they have the exclusivity in that sense to make the geographical indication possible. So I've done a very, very quick exercise for all of you. I know we have had 3 rigorous days. So if you can just be a sporty audience for me, can you guess the first kind of intellectual property right? What that McDonald's logo would fall under? What protection amongst these would that trademark goes under? So trademarks, right? So the second image maybe not a little clear, but this is a camera, for example. Which kind of IPR would this fall under? Any guesses? Designs. Okay, so designs is one thing if you're looking at the aesthetics part of it. How does it look like? But if we want to go a little more in detailed, for example, the functionality of it, because it is solving a problem, it goes under patents, right? So this is basically patents. And then this book, which is basically a content, falls under copyright because it is content. The secret formula of Coca-Cola, trade secret. They haven't patented it because, again, patents have a limited 20 years of shelf life, after which the companies would get a monopoly over a period where other competitors can make it. So Coca-Cola is like 100 years old brand or maybe more. They never wanted to disclose it to the government also, so they kept it a secret for always. And that's why they're just the only company manufacturing the classical version of Coca-Cola, and despite it's not that big of an industry, still keep it as a secret. What about the painting? The painting? Copyright, correct? Because it is creation. The logo, Procter & Gamble, trademark. The phone, either design or patent depending upon what we are talking about. So in this very basic quick slide, we've learned about what is IPR. Okay, so what is IPR is basically the form that is the end product of any economic zones or any companies that they're creating, they need to protect it. Now let's look at SMEs and IPR. So if you look at this data very carefully, what has happened is that we have seen a lot of startups coming in the Indian space. There is a 5x growth, for example, and it is expected to go about 5 times of what we are creating in India already due to a lot of policies Indian government has given. We are at number 3 right now, just behind US and Britain, in the number of startups coming up in India. Number 3, isn't that amazing? There are about 50 plus schemes from Government of India that are right now supporting to create more and more entrepreneurs in India. On the hindsight, what's happened is, so they are giving us platforms. We have good ideas, bright ideas coming up. But are we basically protecting it from our competitors in Indian, nationally, or internationally? Is that happening? Yes or no? Any idea? So what has happened is there are just 910 applications being filed by startups in India, for example, in 2016. Just 910. So what we are doing is all the hard work, all the funds that we are putting in is basically going unprotected, which means that we are leaving a scope for our national competitors and, of course, international competitors to just copy what we are doing. And we cannot then take them to the court. We cannot sue them even. Likewise, 16% of the startups only file the applications. This figure is disheartening. I mean, if you see the last number over here, you see only 29% of the patents being filed in India are from Indian origin. What does that mean is outside companies like Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Apple, Samsung, they are protecting their IP in India, while the Indian manufacturers are not doing that sufficiently. So this leaves a lot of scope for Indian and international community to kind of poach in into our IP, into our inventions, into our ideas. On the other hand side, there is one encouraging figure I should also share, that we are very conscious in protecting the trademarks that we brand under. So 85% of the trademarks being filed in nationally are basically from us. But we are not doing the same thing when it is coming to inventions and IP. This is the data from IP India. So I have kind of highlighted green and red, which basically means from 2012 to 2017, is the data growing up or growing down relatively to the next year. So you would see here in the terms of patent, we're about 46,000 patents a year. Out of which, in the last slide, I told 70% are from international people, international companies, not Indian companies. In the term of designs, it has slightly dipped down this year, but if we can neglect it, the difference is not that much. We're still growing that. Trademark, we are aggressively, all green pattern in trademarks. Geographical indications, the thing that where you guessed about Alfonsos and Kolapuris and all, we are still doing it right. Copyrights, I have 2 years of data, we are growing in that sector also. So overall, it's a green kind of table, but we need to do it aggressively because this is still, we are at number 10 or in the top 10 only. And out of those top 10, 70% are still being held by the international players, not Indian players. So there is a very, very, very important need. And do you think that IPR is not happening in India? We may be wrong because the recent case studies that I have, for example, if you have known, there is a car, Prius from Toyota. If somebody have gone abroad, have heard about it, they do a battery vehicle, the hybrid vehicle, which drives on battery systems. Now, this happened in India. Toyota has Prius car, which is, I think, they are already commercializing from late 1990s globally, while we have an Indian company by the name of Prius. So Toyota and Prius went into war for the trademark on the usage of this name, and the Indian company won. Why? Because the trademarks are geography-specific rights. So while internationally they are using it much before us, but they never protected the same brand name in India, thus leaving a scope for Indian companies to cope into it. In the pharmaceutical sector, for example, Bayer has, the drugs, the medicines that we take, they do it, and there's a generic manufacturing by the name of Ajanta Pharmaceutical. So they were doing the actual drug, and they were making the copied, or the generic drug. After 20 years of copy, we won the case. Because then the picture came in that we can manufacture at about 1/10 or 1/100th of the cost as what the German companies can do. TVS versus Bajaj, I hope we often who have driven bike would know the DTSI engine technology that we have in our bikes. So this was a very hot and media-related case between TVS and Bajaj. Bajaj won the case for using the DTSI engines. Vodafone went in case with the organization where the Javed Akhtar is basically the chairman. So Vodafone and Idea are basically playing some music. They're not paying the royalty. So we have Vodafone apps and all right now available. They haven't paid the royalty to the artists. So basically being sued, and then Vodafone has to end up paying 2.5 crores for just using the music that was created by Javed Akhtar and company. So all happening right now in India. What we need to do is, it's kind of an appeal from the stage that we need to protect our IPR. No matter what we are generating, we should know how to, protect it. There are a lot of challenges. We don't know it. There is a competition involved. People think it's financial constraints. No, not at all. I think a single patent application in India, if it is being done by an inventor, a solo inventor, just costs about 1,600 rupees. By a startup or SME, it's about 4,000 rupees. By a big corporation, just 8,000 rupees. So it's not much deal about it. So we cannot say the government hasn't subsidized it. So we are doing that already. But we still need to boost up our R&D so that we can match up to what foreigners are doing in the space. IP-related issues are there. People are still not aware how to protect their IP. Thus, after some time, some months, some years, they end up losing to the foreign companies. So, of course, you require a lot of in-house trainings. You need to educate your staff, your scientists, your inventors, your production people, your manufacturing people, so that they know that they're creating something novel, and they should basically reach you or reach the decision makers to make it more inventive. So with that in mind, I will not take, because there's a brilliant panel sitting in it. So that's it from my side. If you have any questions, we can take it later as well. Thank you so much.
So I believe, Harit, the questions which you asked, 10 questions I was counting, and the 11 answers came from the audience, and all 100% yes. So please give a big hand to our audience, please. I acknowledge the presence of Mr. Siddharth Singh, the senior IAS officer here, sitting in audience, and welcome, sir, to this session. Now, moving from this IPR, as it's a very important matter, which is the India has to take care, as a lot of SEZs or EUUs and the various GTA units are coming out with the products, with the latest position on our innovative India, a lot of schemes are coming up. So in the light of this, it's very, very important that IPR is to be taken care of, and this was a very good presentation from your side, Mr. O.P. Mishra. Yeah. Yes, sir. Welcome to the session now. Thank you. So you'll listen to Mr. O.P. Mishra as well as the secretary from the Delhi side. Mr. Mishra, you want to take a little bit of your presentation after 5 minutes?
I was requested that I should give a presentation, so I did that. Want me to do it now, or I leave it?
Whatever. I mean, you were. You're ready? So, gentlemen, I invite Mr. O.P. Mishra now, and a little brief about him. I must tell you guys that Mr. Mishra is a special secretary with the Delhi government, has a diversified experience starting from district magistrate to managing in prisons as superintendent of prison as well, So that's very interesting, sir, being a district collector to the prison. And the General Manager of Delhi Tourism, the Director Projects of NDMC and Delhi Development Authority. He is qualified as BTech in Electronics Engineering of Birla Institute of Technology. Besides experience as a civil servant, he has equal interest in pioneering the urban art initiative called Delhi Street Arts, initiated the concept of the garden gym. Garden gym, sir? No, that's great, yes. And brought Rahagiri to the city, initiated by the government, Wi-Fi in open spaces. That's associated with many waste management initiative, which is very relevant today at this point of time, sir. He has received many accolades and awards. Today, he is handling issues relating to the police, prosecution, and forensic labs in Delhi. Besides being a state controlling authority of the private security agencies and general manager of Shahjahanabad Development Authority. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big hand to Mr. Mishra.
Okay. First of all, I thank Mr. Babulal Jain for inviting me to this special occasion. I am not an expert on special economic zone. I do read a lot about it, but I've never worked on this side, so I will talk about something different. When we talk about special economic zone, we talk about development, we talk about 200 good things, but there are small criticisms to these enclaves of development, which says that it brings in regional disparity at times in Vietnam and China and places like the southeastern countries. It has been seen that they are treated, the labor is treated as if they are in labor camps. There are many issues. But when I come to India, we will talk about something, I am going to talk about something very different. SEZs are going to be there. They are going to be there for, last year also I saw there was an increase on something like 150 parks all over the country. But they have some issues when we see that the material and men, access to the land is much easier. It does bring some security issues. So I thought I will concentrate on my core subject, how we can, when we are creating an economic zone, when we are talking about development, we have to be a little sensitive about some infrastructure which may secure us a lot. So when we talk about development, we tend to lose the security perspective because it has a negative connotation. So we do tend to forget it. But I just want to bring to your notice that there have been some issues. SEZs or EZs will be always a soft target because we all have very easy access to the ports, for the material and men from different countries interacting in different ways. So there has to be, without, it has to be subtle, it has to be very firm when we talk about security of these zones. There are a lot of news. When you go on Google, you will find there are a number of news that this was in 2015. There was some racket going on regarding sandalwood smuggling through these one of the SEZs. So what we need, there are two aspects to that: physical security and cyber security. Cyber security is one thing we keep forgetting. I'll talk about it in length because we are now actually, India is having a very big issue with cyber security. When it comes to physical security, I would say that what is the way forward? When we are creating such beautiful environment for industrialists, producers, processors to have easy access, less taxation, a lot many things. We do need to create a back of a good security services. In fact, in Delhi, you will be very soon having very smart police stations. In fact, we in Delhi are working towards AI-based information sharing with the beat level officers, where all the information we get through CCTVs, through PCR calls, that is 100-number calls, or any other information through intelligence agencies and various, all that will be crunched, data crunching will take place, and all this will be decimated selectively to the right person where it is needed. So this kind of thing will have to have smart things, and these are not very costly. In fact, it reduces the cost of manpower a lot. There are various agencies in India which are producing very good hardwares where you can detect very, very small traces of explosives or any kind of contraband. Like in jail, even a mobile phone is a contraband. So all kind of checks are easily available, and these are Indian companies. We don't need a lot of technology from outside to have a nice check on our systems. There are very beautiful fire detection systems, and these are all mostly smart. They are AI-based. So we have to have a centralized control system in each of these parks or zones where we can monitor all the activities, anybody walking through, anybody having access in and out of one individual unit to the main park. Everybody can have, all this can be monitored very closely on a controlled way. And we have to have a setup like this. I would say if there are entrepreneurs here, they need to understand the need, and if they can have this good for them as well as for general economy of the country. If we have one single assault or terrorist activities, any of these parks, it will really bring a very detrimental effect on the country's economy otherwise. Cyberspace, you will not believe the next slide. I'm going to show you what we are losing every day on cybercrime. So there are software parks. They are very well aware of how to protect their cyberspaces, their softwares. But there are new things coming every day. Like a few days back, I saw something which is very amazing. There's a device, there's an app, in fact, not even a device, which monitors you for 8 hours. It will look at your face, it will look at your movements, lip movements, and I will exactly produce your video without you being there, and lip movement and voice, which will be exactly matching you. It will be a very difficult thing even in the courts or the cyber forensic experts to make out it's real or not. So this kind of thing is happening very fast. So we need platforms where we can have cyber checks. Then there is very complex ransomwares. Many of you would be aware of. These days, we are facing huge issues with the ransomwares. In many of the, particularly the IT sector, institutions have faced it. This slide will tell you what is the scenario. If you see, we are losing something like 88,000 rupees to cyber criminals every hour, a bank hour. I'm talking about bank. Now I'm coming to the individual. We are losing 1.4 lakh crores to the cyber criminals. We lost it in last year. And there are a cyber attack every 39 seconds. So I'm talking in this context because when Mr. Jain was talking to me about SEZ, I said, I am nobody in SEZ. But yes, I can tell you that SEZs can have a big issue if they do not look at these at this point of time, at the time of inception, or even if there are old SEZs, Kandla and all, they have to come on board, realize the need for security checks, realize the need for check on cyber crimes. Because cybercrime in a public place and a SEZ, the impact will be huge when we compare it with SEZs. Way forward is we all have to be sensitized, awareness drives, and then there has to be a cyber investigation support center in each of these, or if there can't be if there are smaller parks or zones, there can be a cluster concept where you need a cyber investigation support center, because what is happening is whenever there is a cyber lapse, wrong done, people go to somebody who think they are experts, somebody from the market who claims to be an expert, and they land up into a bigger mess. So there has to be an institutionalized system of cyber investigation whenever there is something happening. This is the only way to stop these, and there's no other way. So we have to have authorized centers where we go and get ourselves checked. There are very many software for cloud analysis, malware forensics. And of course, all this will have to have a linkage with the state police. In case of physical centers we talked about, you will have to need an access to the custom department as well. Thanks. I think that was my expertise, my field, so I spoke on that. Thank you very much.
Sorry, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, there's a little change in our program. We have with us Mr. Sudhanshu Pandey, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Commerce, Government of India, who has very kindly consented to deliver the valedictory address. Now, he has to reach his office again for a meeting at 1:30. We had told him earlier that we'll release him by 1:15. But now that our program has been delayed a little, with your permission, we'll make this small change, and he will deliver his valedictory address now, and then the session will continue, and then we'll have the vote of thanks in the end. So, with your permission, Chair, I think we can invite the Additional Secretary of Commerce, please.
Thank you very much, sir. He has been my senior colleague a long time ago. We have worked together in several positions. And when this initiative came, my only remark was, it's very timely. Because what has happened in India, that one, we started very late on the concept of economic zones. We started with export processing zones, gradually graduated into special economic zones, and then we had multiple variants, software technology parks, special parks, and even though SEZ in India have contributed immensely, but their contribution, in my opinion, has remained suboptimal. And globally now, there is a paradigm shift which is happening already. Because when this concept came, it came with 4 basic objectives. One was investment, and the other 3 were exports, employment, and experiment. Now, experiment is extremely important, and I see this initiative as part of that last E. Globally today, the manufacturing, the trade, the transaction, financial transaction, everything is changing in a big way. The manufacturing, if you look at now, you will realize that if in the top 20 firms, earlier 15 were the manufacturing firms, today they all are in the top 10, 6 to 7 service firms. And the way the global economy is going to change in coming years, it's going to be very different. The industrial revolution that we saw and the digital revolution that we are seeing, we just heard Mr. Mishra. So you can just imagine what kind of challenges each one of us would be facing in years to come. Already in the manufactured goods, globally now, various surveys, they indicate the OECD is the most authentic research. They say that globally now, even in the manufacturing, almost 55% component comes from service. And that is embedded in the manufactured goods. And the future predictions are the most common, and the thing that we can relate is, say, the automobile, your car. And the time is not far when people say that the service value in a car is going to be almost 85 to 90% of the cost of the car, and just about 10%, 10 to 15% will be the hardware part. Now, this is the shift that is happening. Now, why I am mentioning this? If this is the shift that is happening, then the SEZs that we created, because the manufacturing of tomorrow is not going to be manufacturing of yesterday. It's going to be very different. It will be all driven remotely. It will be all driven by AI. And when almost 10 years ago, and we often quote China, and sometimes we quote it for valid reasons. When the AI came, in rest of the world, the threats from AI was being discussed and debated. That AI is going to take away jobs, AI is going to threatening the traditional way of manufacturing and businesses. But what China did, they said, how do we best use AI? I am talking of almost 12 years ago. And they said that 3 Ds will determine application of AI. Dull, dirty, and dangerous. They said that anything which for a normal human being is dull, monotonous, and it takes a toll on ordinary human being to perform that function, that is fit for AI job, driven by robots. Dirty, there are many functions in society which, as the society is getting emancipated, none of us would like to do, but somebody still has to do. We keep on hearing accidents. Only yesterday, again, 7 people died in a sewer cleaning operation because of the obnoxious gases that they inhaled. So they said dirty is the second area where the AI and robotics will work in tandem. And third, dangerous. Anything which poses danger to human life, that is the third area where the AI and robotics in tandem should be applied. Now, why I am saying it's the attitude which determines the way we are going to address a particular challenge. Challenges will come every day. The world is changing very rapidly, and if with each challenge we only feel threatened, then perhaps that is the most pessimistic way to look at life. The positive way of looking at life is that with every challenge, we try to discover what is the opportunity. So for this digital revolution which is happening in manufacturing, there is going to be huge opportunity for a country like India. Because you have demography on your side, you have qualified manpower on your side, you still have the labor arbitrage on your side. The cost elsewhere are going up and up. And the still cost of living in India is relatively less, especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So that is an area that we have to now fan out. And the huge area that lies underused, suboptimally used, especially in our special economic zones or some even manufacturing zones, even estates, industrial parks, we need to have a very serious look. About 8 years ago in Shanghai, after having experimented in 80s with the Shenzhen, most famous of the experiment that China did, they converted that small fishing village into one of the most modern cities. And the average income in that city went up. Mr. Mishra said, yes, disparity. But then it was on the positive side, it went up by 100 times in a span of about 30 years. Yes, at other places, there was no SEZ, and therefore the rise in the income was not that fast. So in that sense, disparity got created. But here was an opportunity for others to emulate, other regions to emulate, and that is how subsequently they did. Recently, for the service industry, they saw that the future is now going to be, as you see even in India, your almost 62% of the GDP comes from services. If you look at the developed countries, then the contribution of services industry is about 80% plus. In countries like Singapore, it is well over 90%. The limited point is that the service industry is going to drive the future growth globally. In some countries where The manufacturing has not happened like it happened in our case with the telephony. We were still struggling with the conventional telephone system. The mobile telephony came, it disrupted, while several hundreds and thousands were still in the queue to get the landline connection. Everyone switched over to mobile phone, which was readily available. Now that is what is going to happen with many countries who have missed the manufacturing stage of their economy, because they will leapfrog into service industry by default. The value addition is going to be again in the service industry. And therefore, the global economic zones that we have to see today, we have to think that what kind of incentive, what kind of infrastructure, what kind of security systems, what kind of labor laws we need. I was mentioning about Shanghai, that they started an experiment in the service and they created services special economic zone in Shanghai with 6 services, including the banking service, which was one of the core area for them. And today, each one of the service there, it has transformed. It is going to bring in structural change in the Chinese economy in the coming decades. And this is the experiment I was mentioning about. Because China knows very well that now from the development stage, because of the manufacturing, the structural shift of the economy has happened, and they will enter into the next stage of development. And to sustain the future growth, now manufacturing is not going to be their bread and butter. You see already surplus capacities in steel, surplus capacity in several areas. They have started posing their own problems in China. And if they had not only started ahead of time towards the new shift, then perhaps they would have been into some trouble economically. But having realized that now they have moved into a stage from where they have to build upon to the next stage, they started this experiment with Shanghai, and this experiment is now going to give them dividends. And Beijing, now I am quoting Beijing in particular, they set a target for Beijing city. Beijing city till late 2000 was less than 40% of the service contribution GDP coming to that city. And they said, for this city now, our target is that we will cross 70%. By 2010, they had crossed 50%, came from the services. And as lately as 2016-17, now Beijing is well past 60%. It is going to touch in terms of services contribution to around 70%. Now why I am saying so, this initiative which someone has started is very timely. And policymakers, industrialists, state governments, everyone has to think where lies the opportunity for employment, growth, economic development in future. Basic manufacturing for India will remain important because we have a strong base of population, and therefore our demand even for consumer goods is going to be very strong. And it's a growing population. It's a growing population in contrast to several aging geographies. So therefore, we cannot ignore manufacturing. But without ignoring manufacturing, how do we integrate the future industry in the manufacturing? That is going to be challenged. I was going through the program, which was very interestingly drawn. It talked about the challenges. It also took case studies. In one of the sessions, full session, there were a number of case studies that were chosen. And also now a complete session was there, how to promote investment and trade in these areas. Lastly, we also have to see how the world is trading, because what you produce today, you don't produce only for yourself. Today, many things you produce and others produce for themselves as well as for global citizens across the borders. And therefore, the manufacturing standards are going to be very different if you were to succeed. And the economic zones in that sense also offer you an opportunity, because in a diverse country like India, it is not possible to change the ecosystem everywhere, because we live in centuries at the same time. One part of India will be in maybe 2nd century, and one part still will be in 18th century, 19th century. And that is what is our diversity. But if we use this platform, then we can enter into 22nd century, converting it into one of the best infrastructure, best facilities, best skilled people, and compete with the rest of the world. I think this is the century for economies like India, but we will have to work hard to convert that opportunity into a reality. So thank you very much for inviting me. My sincere apologies that I couldn't stay because of the sudden program with the ministers' meeting. And since minister is traveling, so it is not possible to reschedule those meetings very easily. So thank you very much, sir, once again. And my apologies to all panelists that their program got disrupted, and so my sincere apologies.
We are honored, sir, Pandey, that you had made it. Siddharth Singh, sir, wants to say something about you.
Yeah. I would just like to say that, I have to propose a vote of thanks, but he'll not be there. So let me thank him. Thank you so much, Sudhanshu. It's really a pleasure, and I'm really grateful to him for sharing his insights, and giving us so much food for thought. He has great experience in services, in trade policy, and he has been one of the most, dynamic officers in our ministry. I've had the pleasure of working with him earlier, and we go back a long way. And I'm really grateful that, he took time out of his very busy schedule and could spare some time with us. Thank you so much, Sudhanshu. Thank you. Just a small memento from our side.
Thank you. This was not required.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our Secretary, Commerce. So, I think we have been very lucky, that we have such a great profile of speakers here, and different subjects. Now, I would request the Development Commissioner. No, I want you to speak. Yeah, because the lead. Yeah, so you better, because now the flow is there, and you can talk about your experience on the unit side, I mean, the presentation is not required because you have already given. So only thing, the experience which you have, after talking to the units, that if extempore you can talk. That will be very interesting.
I think that has already been covered.
You already covered, no?
In the units part.
Before
See,
session.
I was more interested in slightly from the presentation, without, if you are not getting bored, as a academic side. We have seen the macro level things in SEZs which are happening in India. Of course, we have also had discussions on at a macro level, at a global level, as the subject is already there, the global economic zone. So I had as a student, I am not talking as a Joint Development Commissioner, as a student of Gujarat University. I am doing my PhD in management, and SEZ is one of the pet topic. So I thought, let me also have a such academic type of study, which at a glance, I will not take more than 10 minutes, if you permit. But this is purely a contemporary academic paper on secondary sources. If you can able to hear on the academic front, I can go ahead. If no, these are see, problems will always be there. There should be always one problem. So units will always have the problem. This is in continuity. But the things, we have that type of vision, how down the line, like how the secretary has told that, now it is not, how we can now look not for the traditional manufacturing, but we have now something different required beyond the traditional approach. So that's what, already this, I have made this paper 6 months back, but I have added certain slides, which are the emerging areas, till date, how we can go further for expansion of these activities of SEZs.
Mr. Shende, may I request you to just expedite, whatever slides which is not relevant.
No.
Yeah.
That's the reason I am just going ahead.
I appreciate that. Yes.
Why the objectives are now over. Almost everybody knows what is the objectives of SEZs. Acting as a SEZs are like a vehicle, drivers, catalyst, and of course, linkage between the backward and forward economic linkage, these other things. No, this is also a known thing, this how the last 25 years we already celebrated the concept of globalization, how it has come up, the globalization, liberalization, conversion from Impetus policy to exim policy, and how where we SEZ come out, the sir has told that SEZ as an experiment. So this is how quasi laboratory had come up in 2005 as act. And then we have seen the global recession, we have seen the Lehman Brothers problems at macro level, how the things has, the challenges which has been come up, and then now this is what the gap we sought, how to go forward. So that is how the challenges which has already been notified, various sector targetings, poor managements and the insufficient incentives, fiscal, non-fiscal. So this is already known fact. Now it is a time to evaluate the SEZ, the new things which has been apart from the known challenges, the globally which have now, we have our policies, our SEZs should be more compatible, the concept of green zones, the environment, the compliance part is more important. So now it's not only the incentive part, but now sustainable development growth, as Babulal Jain sir has already given the 17 factors, the 17 objectives to be fulfilled. Most of the global countries, they have gone for a sustainable development program 2030. This is all the United Nations instructions, and India is also one of the members. So we have to see that globally what are the things which are taking place. That should be also part of that should be implemented in our SEZ policy. Sustainable development, environmental problems, the social and corporate governance standards, and recently what the WTO compatibility, the WTO issues, we see that most of the MEIS, ACS schemes already we got instructions to remove the things. So these are the new challenges where, and globally, we have to accept that now we have to make a mindset, yes, we have to evaluate these SEZs. No more SEZs, that is SEZs are over. How to go forward? That's what the paper, and then the present scenario also, we have seen that what are the statistics as on date. Hopefully, we are covering the 100 millions exports in this year. And this is a sample example how we are trained the Indian SEZs in the sector-wise growth. You can see the approach has already taken from the manufacturing to the non-manufacturing. You can see that the growth which has been taken place from the April to December, that is a slightly a 6-month figure. But you can see which are the segments, non-conventional energy, trading, computer, engineering. You can see that one of the serious note I observe as a research scholar is a change of paradigm from labor-based to a non-labor-based. And equally, we have to balance as a social fabric, we have to balance the semi-skilled people, we have to balance the unskilled people, we have to balance the high-skilled people. So all different type of segment, what we are, our India is consisting of various type of India versus Bharat. what right now we are told, from the 22nd century to 22nd century. Similarly, we can see the growth percentage in the multi-product SEZs in the government. You can see that the common point, all this Falta, Cochin, Vizag, MPS, Kandla, the growth, one is because of the good infrastructure, logistic and seaports which are very close to that vicinity of that SEZs. Second is some of the value additions like in Falta, metal SEZs, metal units are there, non-ferrous metals, Cochin, high value jewelry exports are there. So that's how the growth has taken place. So this is what I'm telling, that how the infrastructures and other value addition services are there. And see, academically, I was just going to the SEZs as a global experiences, how it has been taken place from in this recent years, you can say 17, 18 and 17 that. Shenzhen already you said, and paradigm from developed nation to developing or less nation. This is always the concept of China. I was going to that article, China plus one. China 1 plus, China 1 plus policy. That means every Chinese unit in China, he may have another one unit in the other part of Asian nations, either in Vietnam, either in Philippines, or in Lagos, or Cambodia, and they're just trying to make that you can say, different units from China into other part of the nation. And of course, the biggest threat, this is the part of like how opportunity and threat, the biggest threat for India is also the China's inclusion in their concept of Belt and Road Initiative, where almost 69 members, more than 70 members are the members of that BRI project of China, and this is what one of the biggest, you can say, challenges for Indian SEZs, the investment they have gone and the employment generations with this concept. Similarly, the Japan, their projects, Thailand, Oman, Qatar. So I mean to say, this is what the other countries have gone for, a global policy. I mean to say global footprint policy. Basically, India is also on the way of global footprint policy. And this was mostly, the research was related to the projected investment, projected employment, projected segments, administrative and economic control, reforms. And almost most of the studies has been taken place for all these different topics related to that. This study was taken place for this about 35 countries like Asian, Vietnam, Indonesia, Laos, Cambodia, East Asia, China, South Korea, South Asia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka. So these are the various, and mostly the focus was on the African countries also as well. We can see the different nations and other like Latvia, Poland, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Belgium, Europe. So these are the various, what the development which has taken place in the 2017, what I have seen that how they have been changed places, the administrative reforms, the policies, and the projected segment, you can see the sectors. So I mean to say, overall various sectors. Okay, I thought, okay. So just when I summarize the things in the three areas, which are the projected sectors, which are the investment which taken place, and which are the employment which has been generated, projected and proposed and existing. So in the year 2017, we find that Asian nations are the number one where the development has taken place, 61. African nations are also behind because more of the Chinese investment, $1 trillion Chinese investment is going in about this African SEZs. India also has a good development in recent past, 35 SEZs, as I told you, in manufacturing various products, services. So this is how the employment also projected for different nations. So overall this paper, the more important which are the critical issues which the other countries had taken place, importance of various things. So I have bifurcated the various issues as administrative and economic policy, fiscal incentives and non-fiscal incentives. So it's so purely, when I've gone for the various papers and various reports, I've been observed that a lot of changes have been taken place in the administrative and economic reforms, and they have integrated this SEZ as a national mission. It's not a separate something like that. They have integrated and given the priority, and they have got their own, like Zimbabwe, there is a ZIM asset program. Every industry has their own program. Like Nigeria, they are having the Make in Nigeria export, mine. So every country has come up with a different type of things. So these are the parameters which I have seen that on these parameters, most of the countries has taken action on, and these have been segregated as a administrative and economic policy, fiscal incentive. These are the same thing what is in. Okay. So this is what the study has given me, the different aspect of research gap between India versus rest of the different group of nations in terms of administrative economic reforms, fiscal and non-fiscal, where we rank in somewhere in second rank in administrative and economic. In non-incentives, non-fiscal, we are ranking in third. That is what I feel. The conclusion, I'm just concluding the things like, which is a purely SEZ, there was a big question mark whether it will be continued or not. Yes, it will be. And we can do it in a successful way. That's why I'm having a very strong faith that the concept which has been globally accepted as an economic tool in India, it will be a day will be there after a decade. We'll see in the different arena. The global footprint policy also we've seen that in China, Japan, Thailand. Similarly, India, we have gone for a Chabar airport. We have gone for a Sitwe in Myanmar. We have gone in some airport in Sri Lanka. So we are also equally planning. The Act East policy is there. Northeast segment is there. Japanese, they are going for this. So I mean to say, these are the various SEZ. Is not anything copycat phenomena. It should be a geographical, it is a tailor-made, my country's requirement. So this is my country requirement. So that's the SEZ policy should be a customer-friendly, the tailor-made policy. And some of the new areas, service SEZ already we have discussed. So recommendations, this is the study recommendations. These are the 4 or 5 recommendations what I said. So now this is the high time to think on this subject, focus on the high technology, like defense, aviation, nanotechnology, drone areas, adoption and strategic integration of digital technology. The most important what we are facing, every state we are facing about the suicides of pharma. It is already in the policy. Now time to think about the contract farming. Restoration, soft skills, technology, other forms. Of course, another recommendations were already there, which are the WTO compatible, how to avoid if the things, to identifying the collateral area, how to find the incentive for warehousing, less insurance premium. These are the alternatives for WTO compatibility. Thank you. And thank you.
So you have enough time in the question answer session, and since he is a development commissioner, has tremendous knowledge, I wish you all the best for your PhD, sir. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to present to you Mr. Martin. He has, although he's looking very young, but he has got a lot of experience behind him, and he has got a knowledge of the various SEZs working. So, ladies and gentlemen, big hand for Mr. Martin.
Okay. So I originally planned this presentation with some more time in mind. So I'll try to be very quick and go through it, hit the main points, and carry on. So why is business intelligence important for special economic zones? Business intelligence, why is it important? It's going automatically. So I'm sure at this point most of you have heard of business intelligence, or BI. You've probably come across it before. A set of resources or infrastructure. It takes business data, breaks it down, analyzes it, and produces actionable information. It allows you to take advantage of otherwise unrealized business opportunities. And it's applicable across all industries and sectors. But why focus on special economic zones with this context? And I put the glasses up here because BI is like a good pair of glasses if it works. And you could probably still walk around, you can get in your car, you can drive to work, you can get things done without the use of glasses. But when you put them on, it adds a layer of definition and detail that you cannot get otherwise. So it's very useful from that perspective. So why the focus on special economic zones when it comes to business intelligence? And the answer for me is fairly straightforward. It's been touched upon by many of the other speakers throughout the conference. And it's, quite honestly, we live in a very complex world with accelerating technological growth, globalization. It's expanding business opportunities around the world very quickly. And the rate of growth is only getting faster. And special economic zones, they've played a very interesting role in that development and lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. They've created hubs of business and in some cases entirely new cities. There's a massive amount of potential. They're laboratories for better policy. They offer all kinds of incentives and advantages that, if exploited, if used well, they have amazing results. So if these zones want to tap into their true potential, if they want to evolve to the next level and to the next era of industry and trade, they'll need good business intelligence to reach that stage, to reach that point. Now I'm going to really quickly go through two case studies to kind of highlight and illustrate the importance of this here. And the first is the Honduras ZA program, or Zones of Employment and Economic Development. Honduras, as a country, is low middle income. It has pretty high levels of economic inequality, for I think the highest in Latin America, very high murder rate. There's lots of issues, demographic, geographic, present in Honduras that can be fixed with good policy, better governance, rule of law. And the ZA program proposed to fix that by creating special purpose economic zones along the coast of Honduras. And these zones, while still staying within the framework of the Honduran Constitution, they were de facto independent. They had legal autonomy. They've used the term startup cities, charter cities. It goes back to 2012. The idea itself here isn't new. It's just very privatized. And they were proposing to bring in private developers from all over the West to come in and develop new cities that Hondurans could live in, work in, etc. They had vision. They had international backing. They had supported the president, the National Congress, the highest levels of Honduran government. They had all the teams arrayed, Nobel Prize winning economist Paul Romer, a number of other economists from the United States. So they had the dream team as far as getting a zone program set up and installed. And they expected it to become the Hong Kong of the Americas. They drew up these great plans, and you can see these nice photos of what they expected it to be. And the reality proved quite different from that, unfortunately. So as of 2019, the zone program, it lies fallow. It's not working. There's been little to no development. They subdivided the land. They got the legislation passed. They hit all the checkpoints that precede development, but nothing so far has been developed. They were extremely unpopular among the public of the average citizen of Honduras. They saw them as zones of neoliberal exploitation, and they did not support them. There were riots, there were protests. Like I showed in the last slide, this is an example of a faction that was out in the streets against the idea of these zones, against the idea of foreigners coming in and taking away Honduran sovereignty. The government support didn't prove very effective because many people in Honduras don't see them as legitimate. There are all kinds of controversial elections. There was a coup back in 2009. These were all things that the zone program failed to kind of predict and plan for. They had all the resources, they had all of the teams in place to get this done, but they failed to perform the correct feasibility studies. They didn't do any opposition research or try to understand the opposition to the zones themselves. They completely skirted over that. And then on the other side, the private investors and developers didn't do enough political risk studies to determine the level of institutional corruption in Honduras that they had to weed through, and they completely, again, failed to measure public backlash. So Honduras remains a failure as far as special economic zone programs are concerned. And the second example I'd like to go through is Rwanda, because they have quite the opposite. The effects have been quite the opposite. It's proven very effective, the zone program in Honduras and also their overall economic development. And Rwanda, of course, back in 1994 was the site of one of the worst genocides in recent memory. So they pretty much started at the bottom as far as economic development is concerned. They they were in very dire straits by the time they came up with this Vision 2020. So the pillars here are fairly straightforward. Lots of countries around the world that are developing, low income, try to hit these benchmarks and improve their economy. So they too had a vision for the future, like the Hondurans. But the difference lay in the investigative groundwork, the business intelligence that the Rwandan government was dedicated to assembling from the very beginning. They sent advisory teams. The President, Paul Kagame, and his government sent advisory teams all over the world to places like Singapore, Shenzhen, the United Arab Emirates, and they attracted data and accumulated information about how these countries developed their own economies, how they developed their infrastructure, how they attracted investors from around the world, and how they rose from agrarian or fishing villages all the way up to massive cities with all kinds of trade and economic implications. Rwanda is a very small country. It's landlocked in the center of Africa, and they have to find a way, and they're continuing to find a way to work around that. And then finally, they wanted to establish political stability because the government massacred people 25 years ago in the hundreds of thousands, even a million, and political stability in Africa is an extreme problem in many cases. It severely limits their economic potential. So Rwanda had to fix that problem if it was going to succeed. And so here you can see, broken down what they did right. From a business intelligence perspective, they pretty much hit all the marks that a country could when they're trying to develop their zone program. And because Rwanda is so small, you can kind of think of it as a sovereign economic zone to some degree. So they went to countries like the UAE, to Singapore. They studied their bureaucracy. They studied the regulatory framework, their strategies for attracting investment. They compiled the data sets and they synthesized it in the system that currently operates in Rwanda. Their government system is based on all of that information, that external data that they accumulated when they went around the world studying these different frameworks. They modeled Kigali SEZ off of the Chinese Special Economic Zones of the 1980s. They studied the Singapore Airlines, Emirates Airlines, in order to develop their own public airline company that now connects Rwanda with all of mainland Africa and has plans to expand out from there and connect it to business centers like Dubai, London, New York, Shanghai. So they really, from the very beginning, focused on acquiring the data that they needed in order to analyze and plan for how they could reform their economy and how they could grow it and move forward.
Mr. Martin, you left with big 3 minutes.
Big 3 minutes, all right, no problem. So the statistics here, they pretty much speak for themselves. The growth has been remarkable. The GDP, has grown 9 times over the past 25 years, with an average growth rate between 2013 and 2017 of almost 8% year after year. They are the 48th least corrupt country in the world, and for context, that's higher than Italy. They've doubled their life expectancy since the Rwanda genocide over the past 25 years. And perhaps the most interesting of them all, they're ranked 29th in terms of ease of doing business across the entire world. That's higher than Japan, that's higher than Switzerland, that's higher than the Netherlands. So quite a remarkable jump in just 25 years. It would be a fallacy to say that business intelligence is the only reason why they've reached these benchmarks. I wouldn't say that. But it, at the very least, has equipped them with the tools and the understanding that they needed to build themselves up to this point. And that's why you have people going around saying that Rwanda could become the Singapore of Africa. And that's a lofty title and goal to move forward, but their progress, again, it speaks for itself. So in review, business intelligence certainly has a role to play in the development of special economic zones and in tweaking their operations to make them better and more useful, more accountable. It doesn't have all the answers. It won't ensure your success, but it allows you to kind of get at investigate the deeper story and the context of the market that you're focused on, of the people you're accountable to, and to really try and grow and become more competitive in this globalizing world. It's becoming more and more complex, and you need to be able to take a close look at the data and arrive at the right decisions, the decisions that need to be made to reach the next level of zones and their experimentation and prosperity. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. It was very insight of you, and we got a knowledge about the other SEZ as well. But few questions will come from the audience a little later. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present the last and not the least, my trump card, Vineeta. Vineeta is actually working for the World Bank, and she has been educated in Singapore. Here in India, she has been working with a lot of ministries, and she will talk to you about not the real SEZ policy as such, because you people have by now done PhD on that. So, Vineeta, please go ahead and introduce your topic.
Yeah. Thank you very much. A good waiting period, but it was worth the while listening to so many illustrious speakers before me. This is the last session between me and lunch, so I'll just go straight away to the topic. So we're talking about SEZ policy myths and drivers. So I would like to first demystify certain truths which have been associated to lead to success of SEZs, and also look at certain policy drivers which actually lead to the success of SEZs. And this is taken from a research done by Competitive Industries and Innovation Program in association with the World Bank Group. And it's based on an analysis of 346 zones in 22 countries by the CIIP in partnership with World Bank. So this is a research study, but I thought we should go through it together to understand what exactly works and what doesn't work. So what are the myths? So first, myth number one, SEZs catalyze economic development in the surrounding region. Well, actually not so much. So SEZs have a non-distinct economic trajectory relative to the countries in which they are located. And most zones have resembled their national average in the end. So, and the positive effects of the zones actually go down, 20 kilometers down, it decreases, and then there's a diminishing marginal utility, so to speak. And 50 kilometers down the zone, there is no effect at all of the SEZs. So why I've put two pictures of Shantau and Shenzhen is Shantau has different economic belts as SEZs, whereas Shenzhen, the entire city is an SEZ. So should we look at different zones, or should we look at declaring a city, entire city as an SEZ? Like we have the Amravati, perhaps could be another SEZ, so to speak, or maybe the new Raipur is a very good city, which can also be an SEZ kind of on a Shenzhen plan. So myth number two, provision of corporate tax breaks leads to larger success. That's again another myth. Tax holidays actually have no correlation to the zone success in generating employment and exports. And this actually may engender a rent-seeking behavior, by the firms in the zone. So we need to relook at our policies whether tax breaks actually help the performance of SEZs. Myth number three, SEZs generate greater employment for the surrounding region, which is again a myth, because what happens is actually SEZs attract migration from the surrounding regions. And so again, recreating the chaos that cities have created in the urban space today. So, which is leading to, again, unemployment in the city per se. So that's another myth. And myth number four is they show sustainable growth trends. No, they show growth trends in the initial years. It actually accelerates, and then it kind of tapers down to reach to the average level in the surrounding city. So that's what the research says. So there were interesting findings which I thought I should present to all of you here. Maybe to debate and discuss together. So then the SEZ, so after looking at the myths, let's not be so pessimistic. We also look at the drivers. What are the policy drivers that lead to success of SEZs, and what's the way forward? Policy driver number one, non-fiscal benefits are more beneficial than perhaps fiscal benefits like tax holidays. So by non-fiscal, we mean one-stop shops, single window clearances, labor regulations, ease of labor regulations, not necessarily to say that you engage cheap labor or don't give them social benefits, but look at ways in which you can ease the hiring of labor. So that has actually proven to be beneficial for the SEZs across the world. Then the organizational setup, Mr. Preston just spoke about Rwanda. So Rwanda is also cited as a very good example of a good regulatory setup there, where they have an independent zone regulator within the board. So that which is independent of political pressures and is also deployed with sufficient resources. If you have an independent regulator and an SEZ authority, so to speak, then it works well. Policy number 3 is zone size. Now, zone size is also known to impact the performance of SEZs. This study has actually looked at zones which have very large SEZs like the Chalo border gate zone in Vietnam, over 50,000 hectares, and the World Trade Free Zone in Uruguay, which is just 5 hectares. So looking at both these through research methodologies, it's seen that larger zones perform better. So, which may not be such a great policy in, policy learning for India because of land constraints. But this is just a factor that perhaps we may want to know. And policy driver number 4, technological content. High-tech zones are regarded as faster and more illustrious than low-tech and massive production zones. So it's not just about labor and going for massive production, but also looking at what is the distinct product that you're creating in the SEZ, and how are you actually contributing in terms of value addition to the economy. Policy driver number 5 is location. So in retail, as you all know, they say there's only location, and then there's location, and then there's location. So in SEZs also, perhaps, even though it's large in size, but locations matter. So we need to be closer to cities, not too far away, not in remote areas, and proximity to ports have traditionally seen success in SEZs. Policy driver 6 is when services are provided within SEZs, like hotels, residential areas, etc., recreational areas, that leads to greater success. And in Gujarat, we have very good models being developed, the Sterling SEZs and various other SEZs where the planning actually provides for various services. So if you have a holistic township, that's what it comes to again, then it works better, not just a manufacturing zone. Then the country and region-specific context. Of course, it's a well-known fact, but then it's good to also look at well-known facts again to reiterate and redesign our policies. We need to have a good, favorable socioeconomic and climate for inviting and for enabling firms to participate in SEZs. So that really impacts the performance of SEZs. So that's why when we say China's SEZs work better than Indian SEZs, do we really need to look at our regulatory frameworks and see what really worked in China and what didn't work in India? And driver number 7 is again the continuation of the earlier driver, which is country and region specific. National industrial structures with pre-existing manufacturing base and human capital endowment increases the country's attractiveness, while countries that are primarily agriculture-based have challenges in hosting or in having SEZs, successful SEZs. So just to recap, with number 1, SEZs catalyze economic in the region. It's not so true. Corporate tax breaks don't really lead to success of SEZs. Greater employment for the surrounding region, not really so, because it creates conclaves of high employment and productivity. And SEZs show sustainable growth trends? No, it tapers down and shows diminishing marginal utility after a certain point of time. Drivers are greater non-fiscal benefits, a better organizational setup which has autonomy from political pressures with enough resources given. Zone size, of course, that's something that perhaps we cannot emulate, but we'll have to arrive at an optimum size for an SEZ, which is not too small and not too big, in the Indian context perhaps. And the technological content focus on more high-tech and high-productive zones rather than low-tech and large-scale labor-engaging SEZs. Location, of course, like we just said, proximity to natural resources and ports is a big success factor for SEZs. And the services provided, make a holistic SEZs with housing, education, all other ancillary facilities provided along with the manufacturing base. And of course, country and region-specific context, look at our regulatory frameworks and how we could enable and ease them for better functioning of the SEZs. So these are the references, and that's it. A short but thought-provoking, perhaps, presentation. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last speaker on this session and the complete program as well. Now, I would like to encourage all of you to please be ready with your questions, because that's very important, and it has been realized with all our co-panelists that, you know, the questions from your side will be replied. So be specific, and please come out with anything which you have in mind, because we organize here also would like you, when you go back, you should be fully satisfied, you know. So on your behalf, one question I would like to ask to Mr. Mishra. Mishra ji, when you're talking about the security, it is in the light of this Pulwama, the attack which has taken place. Lot of proofs were given, you know, whether the attack has taken place or not in Pakistan. And the best proof was 300 mobile phones were working at that particular time. And then after the attack, all the phones went switch off. So that was something, you know, which perhaps the most authentic this thing, you know. Now, coming back to the importance which you highlighted about this zone which is coming up in every part of India, the security is extremely important. And that reminds me of independence, you know, with Sardar Patel, you know, had gone and met all the princely states, you know, where there were about 500 odd is equivalent to the zones which we are going to have now, equivalent. So we have to give a thought. Those states, you know, which we have brought into India, with this special economic zones, are we going to create those princely states again?
You have the liberty to ask this question, since the
Thank you,
moral
sir.
code of conduct is already in force. As a civil servant, I will not like to reply. But definitely there has been issues which, if you read, there is a Oxford University paper on issues of SEZs, not other zones. SEZs having their own sort of sovereignty. They have a sort of sovereignty, whether you go to UAE or you go to Vietnam. In fact, Vietnam, there has been a lot of protest also on these issues. So there could be, but abhi tak India mein we don't have such a issue at all. The SEZs are all within the commissioners who are civil servants, and they are all working within the format of Ministry of Commerce and Industry.
Thank you, sir. So on this positive note, yes, please give the mic. Yeah, you have a mic, right?
So, Mishra, sir, of course. My name is N.C. Shrivastava. I head a civil engineering firm. Designed Udhampur, Srinagar, Baramulla, Konkan Railways, etc., etc.
Can you?
Yes, of course.
Please.
Got it. So, sir, I'm actually doing a lot of work on DBT and, you know, agriculture, etc. You know, direct beneficiary transfer to these population of farmers. And what I noticed was that we are using the Meghrad server of NIC. So there are these three IT departments, rather sub-departments in India. One is NIC, then you have a UID, and then you have a BHIM. So all three of them work, and NIC incidentally has a lot of data with it. And we are forced to use their servers, and we port most of our data from whichever server that we are using into the NIC servers. Now, ultimately, when you talk about security, which is a very core area of our work, the kind of information that I'm gathering is relevant to big data, and we'll subsequently be using IoTs. So with these IoTs and then gathering that huge amount of data, and with an NIC server which frequently keeps failing, it's really not happening all the time. Just want to, sir, bring it to your notice that if whenever you come to the Government of India from the Government of Delhi, please do something that NIC should have a more robust server where every state may have a very good server, but it should be centrally linked, and that data should be easily accessible to all the ministries in India. Because 30 to 40% of the population data is the same everywhere. because we'll have the Aadhaar numbers, we'll have the person's name, we'll have his crime records, we'll have his, you know, social status, data, everything. And it should be easily interactable with all the ministries. Right now, we have it all individual. We are collecting that data repetitively by almost every department. So it's a waste of energy and resource in a big way. So just wanted to just update you on that, sir. Thank you.
So Shivaso Saab, this is your question or this is your suggestion?
This is just, no. This is just to bring it into his mind. Again, he's already been told this a million times already. So just to tell you, sir.
Mishra, you want to say something
needed.
about?
I had an experience as working in NDMC where I can say that we created our own data center. Of course, that leads to duplicity. There is a duplicate work all the time. But I think people are going for their own data centers. All the departments are going there for their own data centers. It's need of the time. With so much data, you can't expect the whole thing to be crunched into one. It's not possible. So I think departments and states also are going for their own data center also. I would say that there has been down times, but as per my information, it is almost, they're up 99.5%. They claim, I don't know what is. Thank you.
But that was very good question. A big hand to Mr. Srivastava, please. I want everyone you to please ask question. And the person who does not ask question will not be allowed to go from here, please. Yeah, will not be given lunch, right? So then, yes, sir.
I have a small, more of a suggestion for Mr. Martin. Can you share the methodology of your intelligence for determining the success and failure?
What was the last part? I didn't hear that.
Share the methodology you have adopted in intelligence in determining the success or failure.
Sure. So within the context of working with a client, my company will conduct a review of all of the specific needs and the parameters of the data that the client needs, and we'll go through and conduct several research projects. One, in order to collect the initial intelligence, form hypotheses, develop theories as to how it's applicable to the operations of the client or to whatever it is that they're wanting to study, if it's external data, because you have to distinguish between internal and external from the beginning. And we proceed with those initial foundings to kind of focus in on the hypotheses we form and arrive at various conclusions, release a report to the client, and then just kind of work through the analysis from there. But when it comes to the specific case studies, we're mostly focusing on key performance indicators that you can see through various econometric data that just kind of tell the story of their ability to parse through information about their opposition, the different political risks involved, the various investment data concerning their operations. It really depends on the specific case study, the specific example, and the specific client.
Mr. Jain, are you satisfied? Excellent. And I have seen a lot of ladies here, although they are very young, but definitely I would like one of the ladies to put up some question, So it is a participation from their side as well,
Yeah.
You want to say?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
This is Salil Chawla. I represent a global portal, fascinatingworld.com. It is more of an observation, may not be a direct question, since you're prompting us to come forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
So I've taken the lead and opportunity,
Thank you.
First and foremost, good afternoon to everybody. To my understanding, India is at the crossroads. Why? The question is that when we look at the economy pie of India, it is largely still agrarian, around 62% of our dividend, demographic dividend is engaged, direct, indirect, or induced or disguised in agrarian sector, India has jumped to service before manufacturing, almost, as we say, around 60 or 62% of the total contribution comes out of it. Then now push called Make in India, which is trying to prompt us. It is more directional and clarion, into manufacturing. Unfortunately, still it is languishing between 16, 17, 18%, despite of ease of doing so many other quotients, supporting. Government is also trying to support there. And India has a perhaps bad habit of jumping in the evolution, something called jumping the, that hockey stick, like in telephony also one of the speakers said that from landline straight away we have become the world's largest smartphone, skip that evolutionary thing. Again in this, I think India will jump now because like China is into mass production and globally it is being said the time is arriving when from mass production to mass customization is the need of the hour, where in India because of being the global software powerhouse, there is a good opportunity.
Excellent.
Which is steering us positively to
Very
get
good point.
into it. But where
Mrs.
is it
Sinha,
all
make a
leading
note of
us?
Mr. Chawla. Next year, he'll be one of the speaker here.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Anybody else, please? Sir.
My name is P.K. Rastogi.
Rastogi, sir.
Mr. Hari Mohan talked about the patent design and trademark and geographical indicators. Unfortunately, not enough is done to create awareness. Especially when you go to district level or the grassroots level, the level of awareness is very low. I had the opportunity to interact with the Controller General. Their website is very good. But what do you think how the awareness can be increased? Can it be through, as we have the entrepreneur courses, so perhaps it should go at the school and college level?
Right. So I think very, very apt question, and I think it's just not the responsibility of, say, Indian Patent Office. I think the responsibility lies on people like us and you, wherein we can create more awareness together. There have been multiple conferences. In fact, 2 of the conferences are lined up here in Delhi itself, in around vicinity. I think one is in Taj in the next 2 days also about the IPR. So I think the reach is there. We need to figure out more. As far as we are concerned, as a part of CSR, we do talk to a lot of universities, a lot of R&D companies, especially in India, because despite we are into IPR, you'll be shocked, 97%, 98% of our business still comes from outside US. Outside India. So we are working in about 15, 20 countries. In India, we are still struggling to let people explain what is IPR, what is the importance, because the minute they turn into some big businesses, this, they're haunted by big players because we don't protect. So we raised an Hindi slogan like "Pehle bachao fir becho." Like you need to protect it before sell it. Else, what happens is if you do not do that, you can get prone to different kind of litigations, which can be very, very costly and eat up all your profit margins. So it has to start from school level. It has to go to college. It has to go to companies. It has to go to almost everywhere. And I think in income tax returns also, I think I was reading a section. There is now a clause: if you have patents, you get some rebate. So that's something like which is already happening in India. I think the awareness has to, grow multifold. And if somebody would like to talk about it in lunch, I'm free to answer them.
I hope you got the answer, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Give a big hand to. Yeah. This gentleman sitting there, he wants to ask question, Yes, sir. You please go ahead. No, it's fine.
Harit, what you said, I have interacted with the system. The point is their hands are tied. Before they say you do the work, they have got hands tied, so you can't do it. And doing the conference in Delhi and Bombay is not enough. And I have worked with them almost a few months, and I can't convince them.
Sir, I think just a quick comment here would be, with all the internet and data happening and with Jio, giving us nearly free internet, webinars are something that we do conduct and many organizations should conduct. So perhaps if this goes live, this event is somehow not going live and the records would be deferred and will be given tomorrow. But my appeal is like such events, if they go live and broadcasted, people who cannot come to Delhi, they're sitting in some rural areas, at least they can, join in via internet and still the awareness could be done somehow.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. I am from Muniraja from Andhra Pradesh.
Welcome, sir.
I am
welcome.
asking 2 questions, sir. What is the main objective of main effectiveness. What is the main effectiveness of the SEZs in the country? Number second question is, how much fare has been achieved, objectives of the SEZs achieved compared to global SEZs in the globe?
Excellent.
How much objectives has been achieved?
I'll ask Ms. Shende. You can reply the question. There are two questions he asked. He is asking about the contribution of the EPZ into the Indian economy, And the second question which you said? Second question, what was your second question?
Second question is, how far has objectives of the SEZs achieved compared to global SEZs till now?
Say again.
Main objectives.
Objectives.
Achieved so far.
Okay.
Compared to global leading SEZs in the world.
Okay. So, Ms. Shende, can you just give your figures?
Just as far as exports from SEZs, we are almost crossing 100 billions and 30% of the export from the SEZ, number one. And as I told you, prior to SEZ policy, it was a EPZ. And India is a very, you can say, in the Asia is number one. SEZ was instituted in 1965, Kandla SEZ basically. So as such, there is no standard parameters with global SEZ how far. But it's a mission where we can have our own objectives, and definitely we can see that the operational SEZs, 65% of the sanctioned SEZs are already operational basically. So it's a long way to go, and how the reforms, the objectives are getting more and more, we are achieving the objectives of, like you can say, 20 lakhs almost employment we have generated in the last 10 years, 15 years, apart from the export and investments. And definitely, as compared to the segment of Asian, of course, there are different parameters they are having, but we are positively going ahead with our objectives, basically.
So you have $100 billion exports and the 20 lakhs employment, from the SEZ. That's what the Development Commissioner says, that's authentic figure, So the advantage, SEZ has already come in, there are so many people will talk about against and favor, but you just can't. I mean, it's already there, right? जैसे वो शादी हो के बहू घर में आ जाती है तो कोई अच्छी होती है कोई ख़राब होती है लेकिन बहू है अब उसको संभालना ही है आपको तो this is the SEZ is like that so now in the light of this the kind of a contribution which is being given by SEZ the space see the question generally come from the audience to the panel but from panel to the audience there's one question is going to come Singh Saab is here I don't want to lose this opportunity Singh Saab, this regarding the zone, I would like to ask you, because you have vast experience on this, See, in the offset class, which is defense sector has come, and 30%, which is being to be produced in India, there are a lot of space, which is vacant. Now, a lot of EPZ, SEZ, whatever you call it, there is a lot of space vacant, And when it has come, there were certain rules and regulations, and then after that, the income tax stuff came, MTT and all that stuff, and the people are now coming out. Now, those complete has become a real estate, because you see in Pune, people have made 800 crores, because they sold the SEZ to the foreign buyer, So my question to you is this the concept of SEZ which just started, whatever we have gained, apart from that, is this a real estate stuff? If that is so, then what we have to do is to stop this, A, and the B, that entire space which is available, whether we can bring in the defense corridor concept and, the space is utilized for, this 30% offset. Your views on this, sir?
It's a pretty difficult question, but let me tell you, all the policies which are made with all good intentions. But if people are bound to misuse policies, or if they, take advantage of a certain concession which is given in a policy, not with the intention of, increasing exports or something, but just to avail of that concession, then nothing can be done. It's a question of attitude. I mean, you have a policy and people are bound to or, if they are bent upon misusing it, it happens. And then, you ask government that, okay, you gave so much land to these people, they are not doing anything. So what options do they have? What options do the people have? What option do the government have? Sit with it. You can do nothing else. Or, find a way how to utilize the land. So whether somebody has benefited, somebody has misused, somebody has made good use, I mean, it's a story of our country. We are a very diverse country. There are states which do very well. There are states which do not do very well. It's the same thing. You have SEZs which are doing very well. You have very good, successful private SEZs. You have very successful government SEZs. Noida, there is no space available. So it's a mixed story. It's a mixed story. And like anything else, you look at any other policy of the government, there are people who will misuse it. There are people who will hoodwink it. There will be loopholes in government policy. But yes, if people, implement it honestly, there's some good will flow out of it. There's no doubt about it.
So regarding the defense corridor, the creating a north and south, a lot of investment has to come to create the corridor, Can we use the empty space which is there, is about...
See, there's no question of can use. Of course you can use. But, you would need entrepreneurs who are ready to invest. I mean, government can improve the ease of doing business. Somebody can procure land, but you need somebody who will do his due diligence and put his money there. So, the facilities are there, the policies are there. Eventually, it all boils down to who is going to put money. And if you have entrepreneurs, of course, there is a lot of, opportunities in the country. You may not even need SEZs. If there is an opportunity, then even if you put restrictions, people will go and manufacture there.
Correct.
But if there is no opportunity and there is a facility created, still people will not go. So I think what our friend Preston Martin said, I think business intelligence is a very, very important aspect, which is often ignored. And in our haste to sort of create a new policy or to, create a new system, we rush into it. And then there are some teething problems, then there are some issues. But that's precisely the reason why we organize this convention. A time has come that we should take stock of how it has fared, what were the loopholes, where did we succeed, where were the pitfalls, and how the government should proceed further. Because it's a good tool, it's a good policy instrument. The only thing is that you got to know how to fine-tune it, how to hone it, how to, develop more creative sort of assistance, which is WTO compatible, to provide our entrepreneurs and exporters that edge to compete in the global market.
Thank you so much, sir. You may be aware that Mr. Siddharth Singh is senior IS and he has been the architecture of these policies, and no one can reply as Mr. Singh himself, Thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, any questions? We are closing now. Thank you very much for all your participations. And it was very nice that all of you have been here, and with your energy. This success which has taken place is just because of you, audience, and all these ladies who have organized this, very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. R.K. Sahai, for your very kind words. I would invite you to felicitate all of our first-time speakers. Mr. R. Preston Martin. A round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. O.P. Mishra. And Mr. Harit Mohan. This has been such an engaging discussion. I think I speak for everyone here that we've all gained a comprehensive insight into SEZs. I invite all of you in front for a group commemorative picture. I invite Mr. Siddharth Singh, retired IAS and Chairman Wix, to also join us. I also request Mr. Siddharth Singh to felicitate our very enthusiastic moderator, Mr. R.K. Sahai. I now invite Mr. Siddharth Singh to convey the vote of thanks and close the conference.
Well, good afternoon. I'm sorry we got delayed a bit. Speakers on the dais, other participants, ladies and gentlemen, I think over the last 3 days we've had some very interesting discussions here. And as you must have seen, we covered almost all the relevant aspects related to SEZ. In my part reply to the chair's question, I've told you why we organized it. So I'll not go into that again. And I would only like to now, propose a vote of thanks to all the people who came and participated in our events. From the beginning, I think it was the Ministry of Commerce who was very, very encouraging. And we had the Ministry of Commerce with us. The CEO of Niti Aayog came, the Secretary of Commerce came and gave his speech on the inaugural function. My sincere thanks to them. State government of Haryana, who became our partner, their Chief Secretary came again, and they had a very good presentation on the state thereafter. Among other ministries, we had railways, which participated in a big way. We are very thankful to them, and their member had come here, Mr. Rajesh Agarwal, and he told us what's in store for us, for years to come as far as the railway ministry is concerned. And then I think we had from the state governments, other than Haryana, we had from Maharashtra, we had from Punjab, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and we are very thankful to them for their participation. SEZs, which was the topic of this whole conference. From the government SEZs, we had participation from Noida, Mangalore, Kandla, Dahej, Falta. And from the private SEZs, Adani, who was our developer partner, we are very thankful to them. Then we had Reliance, we had Mahindra City, we had Shree City, we had Shrey, Gift, Tata Steel, SEZ. Very, very sincere thanks to them. Mazar Consultancy, they were our knowledge partner and did a wonderful job. Thank you, Mazars. And other than them, among the consultant and think tanks, we had Mott MacDonald, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, RIS, ICRIER, JLL, CBRE, Lead in Public Policy. Thank you. On the legal and taxation side also, we had a very productive session. And we had Desan Shira and Associates, Centrum Legal, A to Z, who participated. Thank you. International participation was also there. As you just heard Mr. Preston, he just spoke to you, and I think a very excellent presentation he made about comparison, how case studies, how SEZs can do well or can go wrong. We also had the OCO Global, Mr. Mark O'Connell, and from Bangladesh, our neighbor, we had Mr. Mustafa, who came and told us about the Kishoreganj Economic Zone and the Chatak Economic Zones, which are coming up in Bangladesh. Then there were some special presentations which were made on railways by the government of Haryana, on FTA, and also a very interesting presentation on Chahbahar, which is a SEZ which government of India, the shipping ministry, is creating in Iran. So that was also there. My sincere thanks to all of them for coming here and participating. Besides these people, we had the infrastructure providers, STPI, Airport Authority of India, ILFS, GIDC, and KASEZ City. So I think for a first edition of any such conference, we had a very remarkable response, which we received from all these people. And I'm sincerely thankful to them from the bottom of my heart. My sincere thanks also go to all of you who participated and made this conference and the event more meaningful. My sincere thanks also to our co-organizers, which are the EPC for SEZs and EOUs, and our managers of this event, Exhibition India Group. Their expertise was really very helpful. My thanks to all of them, the big team which is there from EIG. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful job that you have done. And I think we had our constraints, but eventually things fell in place. And I think we could put up a reasonably good convention and expo for a first edition. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much. And I would now ask Mr. Babulal Jain to say a couple of words.
I'm breaking the tradition. I'm giving a thanks. I want to honestly thank my chairman, Mr. Siddharth Singh, my team people, Mr. Rawat, Mr. P.K. Rastogi, and especially the people from Exhibitions in India. Apart from Prem, is not here now, but Prem has been a dear friend from 1980. I want to thank him. Aarti, I can't forget you because you are A, alphabet starts from A, and I'm B. We'll go up to Z. So, Atabish, you have been very nice. You've been very cooperative. And I especially want to thank a very dear friend of mine from your team, Naresh. So thank you, Naresh, and thank you everyone for coming. Bye-bye.